recording.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I now call to order this joint public meeting, public hearing between the Town of Blackstone Town Council and the Planning Commission. And Planning Commission's okay? We're in joint session? Y'all have a quorum? We have a quorum. Mr. Town Manager, the topic tonight is the proposal to allow computer-based gaming not only in the specialized business district, but the general business district, excluding the historic business district.
That's correct. I'm a little disappointed not to see Tessie here, and she has explained to me she would be here tonight. She has provided us with some documentation, and I must admit I'm going to read it along at the same time with you. And she has submitted a ordinance adding computer-based gaming devices as a conditional use in a general business zoning district in the town of Blackstone. What she has drawn up and what she's presented does not take into account the historic business district, but if we want to do that, we can add to it perhaps. Historic business district is not a zoning overlay. It is simply a Main Street designation. I think personally, if you're going to restrict it from the historic business district as a zoning matter, or if you're going to divide up the business district in that form and fashion, I don't think you should leave the zoning necessarily as is. I think maybe the downtown should be designated in a separate zoning designation. The historic business district maybe should be given historic zoning district, but right now it's only an overlay use for the Main Street purpose.
Okay.
That's the way I would handle it, and just create a separate zoning district. That will require public hearings, and that will require notification. Anytime we change the zoning designation of 50 more parcels by state code, we have to notify every parcel affected. So, personally, I think you deal with the zoning that's before you, and I think the matter should be for business general district, which would be literally everything other than the shopping center that's commercial in Blackstone, for the most part, with few exceptions, okay? And then if we need to, or the decision's made that we definitely want the historic business district segregated, I do believe we need to create a definition. And instead of just general business and specialized business, we've got historic business.
And just for the audience, the reason we're here at this point, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Nash, but I'll attempt to, in August 2018, this council created, we had a request for a computer-based gaming, something the town never had before. The town manager, in my opinion, wisely, looked at the SB zone, and council amended the zoning ordinance at the time on recommendation of the Planning Commission. And now we're in a situation where we've had a proliferation of these gaming ventures all throughout town. And Mr. Nash is, he moved for this hearing to be held tonight. He wants to make the ordinance comply with, reflect reality. Because you got Kangaroo Express, you got Mitchell's Restaurant, and not picking on them, but numerous other places in town that are in the GB zones. They're not in the SB zones. He's just trying to say, look, if we're gonna have an ordinance, it might as well enforce it or not have an ordinance. And I think we all can sympathize with that sentiment. So we're gonna open up for public hearing. And I'll also just throw this caveat too. If you followed the state news, the legislature almost every 4 or 5 days flops. But there's looked like for a long time that these ventures were gonna be outlawed totally. And not grandfathered either, just flat out done away with. I'm reading some tea leaves and think that before the budget's adopted, the General Assembly may, they're allowing casino gambling, they're allowing you to bet on sports teams. I think they may end up allowing these machines and slot machines and tax them. But again, that's just my conjecture. No one knows. Yeah. So I've heard one planning commission member I've talked to said maybe at the end of the night tonight, the wisest thing might be to do nothing until we find out what the governor and the General Assembly are going to do. But with that said, I will now open up the floor for public hearing. This is a hearing on a proposal to expand computer-based gaming from the specialized business district zone to the general business zone. So anyone here tonight speak for that proposal? Anyone here tonight speak against the proposal?
I'm against the gaming.
Ms. Louise Russell.
Yes, I'm Louise Russell, and I'm against it being all over town. I have been from the beginning.
You have.
And I haven't changed my opinion of it. I just think it's not good for our community. I think it's the right thing to do to vote against it. And that's what I have to say.
Very good. We thank you. You have been consistent, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we all have followed, the reason that the General Assembly is having anxiety about these games is because, lo and behold, the state's original gambling venture they launched, the state lottery, has been getting a little bit, seeing their profits dip. Because what's more fun, go scratch and lose, or at least have a chance to play and win? Anyone else tonight? Before I get to members of council, I would like to recognize any members of the planning commission with any comments. I know Commissioner Watkins, you have been very vocal on your concerns about those ventures from the get-go.
I think the planning commission has already voted on this and made a suggestion to council. That's already been done. We're already on record, as far as business general goes. Planning commission's on record now. We voted on that.
Right. And that was against general business.
I was against heading in that direction.
Right. Well, the old medical center site was a case example.
That's correct. But taking that into consideration and considering where the gaming is right now, scattered through town, my personal feeling is the easiest approach to this is to table this, leave a moratorium in place, gaming where it is, leave it alone. Do a moratorium on that. Where they are, leave them alone. Give it another 3 weeks, you'll have a decision. I think either the General Assembly will decide, or within the next couple of months, a judge will decide. You'll have a decision. What you don't want to do, I don't think, is come back 3 weeks from now and say, well, the General Assembly has now banned this throughout the state, so we have to get another direction. I think just leave it the way it is, and then come back and make a decision. Table it.
Very good. Anyone else from the planning commission? And when you say leave it where it is, that would mean the two establishments in the SB zone as well as those that are,
I don't think you can ask them to have them put them back in and then pull them back out and then pull them back in. That's just not, I don't see that as business friendly. I think that's asking them to do more than we should ask them to do, although I'm opposed to it in general.
right.
But I think at the same time, that's kind of overbearing. I think if you left it in place the way it is, till we get a ruling, you're gonna have a ruling.
Yeah. Until July 1st at the latest.
And I don't think it's gonna take more than 2 weeks before that we have a ruling. So if you table it, I think it will take care of itself one way or the other.
Okay. Members of council, how do y'all feel about that suggestion?
If we leave it as is, though, laws are still being broken as it stands.
That would be correct. You have a zoning ordinance in place that was duly advertised and enacted in August 2018.
We
And
had notified the business owners in writing that they needed to remove the machines. And I think after some pleading and discussions, I think the end result was a virtual moratorium, like Tommy's talking about, to wait until the General Assembly acts.
And my concern, though, yes, it would make it all easy on all of us. But how easy is it to turn a blind eye on a rule and a regulation in a local community?
And I do sympathize. There's two businesses that went through I'm sure, considerable expense. They jumped through all the proper hoops. They have quite an investment, I would imagine, on, the Players Vape and the MVP game room. So I sympathize with anybody that goes through the proper procedure and then due to the popularity of the games, and I also sympathize, here's the thing. I think 2 years ago, we viewed these as potentially nefarious and they might bring an element and crime. It's really, in my opinion, you and I may disagree. It's really no difference than going to the convenience store and wanting to pay for your gas and to be the third person in line while somebody scratches and keeps buying lottery tickets. It's been more of an inconvenience, but it also, for those people who own the businesses, it brings people in.
Well, the question at the General Assembly though now is more a question of, do we legalize it all? And a lot of these people to have, the big disagreement at the state level is between the slot machine owners and the so-called skilled gaming, because there's no difference between the two. So the slot machine folks are saying, if you can do this, we can too. The gaming folks don't want that because it competes with their operation.
Right.
So that's what the argument is at the state level. And Eric, I know exactly where you're coming from. If all other things had been in place 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd say, yeah, pull it back out, but I just think we back and forth. I think.
Well, I mean, we sent a notice. When was that notice sent out, Jennifer, to all
It was
the?
December.
I hand delivered them.
You hand deliver the police officer.
Had a
I
deadline.
think it was in January.
We had a deadline that
The December meeting, we gave 30 days. And you went around and spread the word late December and early January.
And the 30 days expired just before your January meeting.
That's right.
So, I mean, even if the General Assembly does vote to allow them throughout the state of Virginia, we still have to visit our ordinance.
That is correct.
And we
No matter what.
could vote not to let them have them in there. Just because the state says they can have them, we can still be more restrictive.
Correct, so that's my point now, as to why are we worried
But I
about
think if
what?
they make it specific, and I interrupt and I apologize, but I think if you read some of this legislation, it's getting down to the specifics about gas stations.
You can have them in truck stops,
And I think it's being written because there's powerful influencing
donors.
Oh, I'm-
donors. that-
Sadler and Bub's Trucking Company and all them.
You know that
They're gonna be there tomorrow morning.
Well,
I think the legislation is almost getting so specific where they're gonna say yes here and yes here, but not here. And if they say legal in restaurants and legal in gas stations and legal in truck stops, then we need to sit down and say, well, do we have to then allow them in our general business?
Why would you have to? I mean,
Because
It depends on how the bill is going to be written. Probably
if
it's
the
going.
state says they're legal in gas stations, I think you are taking a privilege or a right away from the folks that the state has specifically granted to them.
but just like I've said before, so are tattoo parlors.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
pornography.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
All that's
Well,
legal in the state
I
of
think the
Virginia,
question is
but
an adult-oriented business, and I do think Tommy brought up the point, it's 18 or older, and I think there is some leg to stand on to say that this is an adult-oriented business. And
So would our zoning ordinance stand up to?
here's my example, I'll give you an example. Amelia County. Gosh, she just died a while, a tractor rolled over and killed her. Blanton versus Amelia.
Reuben Bland.
Reuben Blanton. Reuben Blanton, Amelia County, I was very green new county administrator, and one of our board members, Betty Benford, rest her soul, very nice lady, her daughter drove a school bus for Amelia Academy, and she drove through a pile of human waste that was dropped by accident in a intersection of 153 at Reuben's driveway. And it was game on from then on. And the county, based on our attorney's recommendation, adopted a zoning ordinance that prevented biosolids from being placed in Amelia County.
Period.
In certain districts,
Or certain districts.
which was the effective, every agricultural district. Anything over, a quarter acre, you couldn't put it on, right? So the effect was, no, you cannot do it. We lost at Supreme Court badly, okay? We won, Mayo grabbed it, upheld us, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of Virginia said, nope. If the state of Virginia specifically says it's legal, you cannot adopt even zoning, because zoning is our privilege. Even a zoning ordinance cannot supersede that which the state says. And if the state says they're legal in gas stations, I think you probably need to tread lightly and make sure.
well, I mean,
that you-
whether that's 3 months from now, 8 months from now, I mean, it could be, I think I've heard January 1st of next year is when, if they do ban them, that's when they would be effective. But no matter what, we're still turning a blind eye. I mean,
At this current state, yeah.
we have denied permits, the planning commission has, we're down at
At the old
a
medical center.
general business district now. I don't know, I just feel like,
Well, my concern I have with it is, I agree with Tommy, but from the standpoint of, we said, we found out they were in the areas where they weren't supposed to be. Said, Bill, go give them a letter. Gave them a letter. Told them to get them out. Then they came in here and everybody complained, and we got into a big fight here in council, and then we agreed to let them have them until the General Assembly.
That was the
I
motion.
think that was it.
So if we go back now, we're gonna be flip-flopping 4 times.
I think
It's gonna make us all look dumb.
probably the wisest thing to do tonight is to grit our teeth and table it until we find out what the state's going to do. But Mr. Nash does have a good point. At some point, this council is going to have to wrestle with the fact that whatever the state does, we've got to make our zoning ordinance comply. Mr. Miller's been waiting patiently to make a comment.
You know, and I'm like Mr. Nash. Okay, if we keep on letting this here happen, who's to say somebody else can, okay, it might not be for gaming, but somebody else comes back here for a zoning question, and what you gonna tell them? Well, they come to you and you say, okay, you let this here go
Yeah,
on
we set a
in a
precedent.
illegal zone. So if I come and ask you, you turn me down, I'm gonna sue you. I mean, there's more to it than this, man.
What if we give them a letter, everybody that's doing it, give them a letter now saying, you are in violation of our ordinance, and we are simply waiting for the General Assembly to make their decision, and depending on that.
I think that's a good
we'll
idea.
determine-
I've got 8 or 9 business owners that signed for the letter, or, gave
Yeah.
their name and all that.
That's a good idea. There's a lot of gray area in local government, and there are times you just, but I do, like I said, I'm like with this Nash, I sympathize with those persons who have put their capital up, gone through all the proper hoops, come to this town hall, gone through the public hearing. I do have sympathy for those folks, but I think, like Tommy says, we're gonna get an answer soon. So and like Tom said, let's don't flip flop again. Or, but is any motion in order? Does anybody?
I would like for it to be in a motion.
All right,
if
hold on,
y'all
Mr.
want to
Nash.
proceed that way.
Before you make a motion, do you
I'm not
want?
making a motion for it because I'll be against it, but.
Okay. You were gonna say something, Mr. Miller?
We're just talking about this. We're not talking about out there in the shopping center. No.
They're legit.
Okay, we talking about right here. I make a motion that we send a letter to the businesses telling them what's up.
Those businesses that have been.
Those businesses that are not in the proper zone, we send them a letter stating, just like Mr. Wilkerson said, that's my recommendation.
Okay. That motion, that would be, just using, for example, some of the people that were here, I think the Race Inn, Kangaroo Express, Mitchell's Restaurant, those establishments that they.
There may be others that we don't know about.
That's
but
the-
we-
right.
we hit,
Who knows?
I think 9 of them or 8 of them that I
Who knows?
hand-delivered them to.
Heck, I'll take the front room of the Courier and just have
You
a
need to-
booth in there.
State what the letter would say. I mean, is it that, okay, we know what's going on.
Just a reminder that, right now, your firm is not in compliance with the Town of Blacksburg zoning ordinance, and we just want to remind you that council's position in January to let you continue to operate till the General Assembly
I
reaches.
think even that motion is scary for the fact that we're admitting that we're allowing it outside of ordinances. So what kind of lawyer could just gnaw that to death against us?
I like the word that Mr. Watkins used, and that's moratorium. That seems,
Greenville County,
I like
put
that
more
word.
moratorium on.
that word, the temporary moratorium, and look for more, closure, final decision in June, or May or June.
But I'm still saying, it's gonna come back to bite us. Because you did not enforce zoning for gambling. Now if something else comes up,
Mobile home, duplex.
I mean, this is things you gotta look at.
Sure,
Well,
sure.
just look at the cemetery policy, how volatile that was.
Right.
I know what you're saying.
Well, let's face it, y'all, you can pass the best ordinances here all day long, unless, and he's got tons to do and so does the staff, unless you catch a violation, it goes sometimes for years. But Mr. Miller we have a motion on the floor to write a letter to those establishments that have been given some extra time. We know who they are. Is there a second to Mr. Miller's motion?
I second.
Ms. Hasbrook is seconded. Any further discussion? This is a 4-member council tonight, barely got a quorum, and if there's a tie, Lord help us.
Does council want to review the letter that he's gonna send first to make sure that you're in agreement, or do
You can
Well,
send
I
it
mean,
to,
everybody,
you want
please
more-
comment.
you
Yeah.
want moratorium, or do you not want that?
just a reminder that well, that's up to the council. What does council wish to do?
Let's ask Tessie when she's available.
Okay.
About the moratorium and what are the impacts if we do adopt a moratorium? Do we need to count the number of machines in other places? Are we saying no more new ones can come in? And so-
We discussed, didn't your motion say, no more than
No
two?
more than two.
No more than two. I think Mitchell's has 1 or 2
Well, there's been a plethora of them when they were returned. They were returned and then.
added on to.
added more.
Okay.
So do we need something from the planning commission first before y'all make your motion?
Well, that's a great point. Remember, does the planning commission wish to make a formal recommendation?
To take,
Are y'all okay letting council make a decision? Would y'all prefer to? We're just talking short term.
I hate to say something, but we already made a decision. We don't have to make a second one, and there is no, public hearing that we're involved in.
True, true.
We made a decision, presented it to council. We said we wanted it out of business general. That's what we said.
Right.
Y'all have total authority to do whatever you want to do. But the thing of taking them out and then putting them back is where I find the difficulty. That's been.
Did we
my
make a
statement.
motion
That's
at the
difficult.
last meeting
In January.
in January? I don't think it was a motion that we would allow. I think the motion was
90 days, I thought was the intention.
yes.
there an actual motion to that effect?
Yeah, and it was specifically they can only put, they cannot put any more than 2. You specified 2. Mr. Jay Wilmot stood up and said, at least allow 3, because places like VUMAC, of course, this is all before the General Assembly got into high gear on this issue. And the motion that carried, and I believe it was unanimous.
You want to get in the minute?
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
I don't know if that was, I think that was gonna be if there was, a definition created.
Yeah, that was part
The
of,
motion was, I think, to have this
to have
public
this
hearing.
meeting. There was,
Right.
I don't
But I
believe
think
there
that there
was
was another one too about allowing them to keep them for 90 days.
Yeah, Lonnie made that motion. Lonnie sympathized with Diana and Gus, who he said, went to great lengths to try to, they called the state attorney general and the
Oh,
county.
yeah, that's when Mr. Morgan said, Mr. Nash, you're not the only one that owns a business in Blackstone. That's right. I remember that very clearly.
So,
Ouch.
we'll just pardon our delay, but no telling what the state will do. And good to see more folks in the audience than I expected to see tonight.
God bless the militia.
Are you commander of Harris Street? You're the commander of Harris Street last time I checked, aren't you?
Yeah, y'all got this General Jefferson, both of them. Robinson.
Just like we
His middle name is Beauregard, isn't it?
keep on with this shit.
It's supremacy.
When you bring them more
Okay,
Four motions made.
Hold on, Mr. Van Orbeck says there were 4 motions made that night in January.
Mayor Colburn asked the council if anybody want to make a motion to rescind enforcement action that was approved in December. He said if no motion made, council is on the record as saying saying you are enforcing the ordinance. Councilman Morgan made a motion to allow gaming to proceed until council finds out in 3 months, 90 days, what the decision is going to be. Ms. Mitchell said her games were gone and she had complied. Mayor Colburn suggested a motion to rescind. That move was done in December and allow everyone that had a gaming machine to resume activity. Councilman asked if there would be a limit on how many. Councilman Ash said if the games are going to be allowed for 3 months, he believed the 2 businesses that paid for advertising should be compensated and given money back. Councilwoman Jones said that Mitchell's went through all the steps they were supposed to go through. She said the businesses that already had them, let them bring them back. She did not agree to let any new come in. Mayor Colburn clarified Councilman Morgan's motion, which is to do nothing until the General Assembly adjourns. And meanwhile, those who received letters would be allowed to bring the machines back. And Councilwoman Jones seconded Councilman Morgan's motion.
They carry 7-0.
Miller abstained.
And
It was-
there was a nay.
And nay.
So it was 5-0.
So.
5-1
all right,
and 5-1 and
with that
0.
motion, we obviously know the General Assembly gets out on, what, the 7th of March?
March 7th.
So as of the 7th of March,
Has that been 90 days? No.
It'll be,
well, and then no, that motion didn't say 90 days.
90
That
days,
motion
that-
said
3
it-
months.
Okay.
so February, March, April. April 27th would be 3 months.
So it still doesn't give you the correct protection. I mean, you're still, then after that,
Because it won't go into effect
won't
until
go in.
1 July.
yeah.
Correct.
You can do a continuation at that point then, in the April meeting?
Yes, April meeting.
Then we do a continuation of the same motion if we choose to?
Read that exact motion, Philip.
And I don't know about y'all, but those were some really good minutes he just read.
They were excellent.
Who took them?
Councilman Morgan made a motion to allow gaming, the gaming, to proceed until council finds out in 3 months what the decision is going to be, and we assume that decision is General Assembly decision. I didn't say General Assembly, but I think it's.
Yeah, but I think that all the 3 months or 90 days ended up coming from, we all thought it was BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, I think is where all that got mixed into. But I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the BZA was discussed earlier.
Yeah. Because they talked about they were gonna appeal it to the BZA.
And then there was a second motion authorizing this public hearing. Councilman Nash made a motion to advertise for public hearing, to amend the ordinance as it currently is, to make it correct, to include allowing gaming devices in the general business district, not to exceed 2 machines.
That's right.
There was discussion, and the motion was seconded by Councilman Wilkinson, and that was a unanimous.
So currently, they can have all they want.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I thought, refresh my memory, I thought.
I'm supposed to say two.
I thought the memory.
But that was for this
That
public
was for
hearing.
this.
Oh, okay.
Because he was gonna create a new definition and
Gotcha,
ordinance and
gotcha.
stuff.
We have a motion on the floor right now by Mr. Miller, who's moved to write letters to the businesses in question, reminding them that, we're in limbo. They currently are not in compliance, but this council has agreed to wait out and see what the General Assembly does before we pursue the issue further, consider the issue further. And Ms. Hasbrook is seconding that motion.